Hi, welcome back to Antioch Center for the Nations. We are continuing our series on Journey with Moses. And the last time we were together, we were talking about the construction of the elements of the tabernacle and how the people were commissioned to bring together all of the gold and the jewels and the materials, the acacia wood, etc. And God gave the ingredients list for all these things to Moses, and he's telling Moses how and showing him images of these things that he wants Moses to construct for the tabernacle. In other words, he's showing him an open vision there on the mountain, and we see that as a type of what happens to us when God shows us a future, or what we call a vision. What we say is our plan or our strategy about the future. Often we will visualize something, just like Moses is seeing it in this case actually on the mountain in images that are given to him. So last we were together, we were reading this, number 246, command and plan to construct the Ark of the Covenant and have them make an ark of acacia wood 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. Overlay it with pure gold, both inside and out, and make gold molding around it. Cast 4 gold rings for it and fasten them to its 4 feet with 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other. Then make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. Insert the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry it. The poles are to remain in the rings of this ark, and they are not to be removed. Then put in the ark the tablets of the covenant law, which I will give you. Make an atonement cover of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide, and make 2 cherubim out of hammered gold at the ends of the cover. Make 1 cherubim on one end and the second cherub on the other. Make the cherubim of one piece with the cover at the 2 ends. And the cherubim are to have their wings spread upward, overshadowing the cover with them. And the cherubim are to face each other, looking toward the cover. Place the cover on top of the ark and put in the ark the tablets of the covenant law that I will give you. There, above the cover, between the 2 cherubim that are over the ark of the covenant law, I will meet with you and give you all my commands for the Israelites. So this is, you could say, the epicenter of God's power would be formed just at the top of this cover below the wings of the cherubim. And this is similar to the vision or the actual viewing of the heavenly realms by the prophets, or Isaiah when he goes into the eternities. Ezekiel describes heaven as well. And the prophet says that God is there between the cherubim. The seraphim are there singing out. Isaiah has that. The reason he says, woe to me, is because the seraphim cry out and say, holy is the Lord. They scream out holy, and thunder and smoke. So a representation of that is here on earth, where God makes contact with the people. And the top of this box, in other words, on top of the law of God, on top of his words, his promises and his covenant, and the testament of it, the contracts, if you would, those stone tablets, right above that, upon the base of his words spoken to us, like Abraham again, who believed that he was who he said he was, and it was counted unto him his righteousness. So God is making this box, and a lot of people speculate about the box being some type of transmission device or a receiver, heavenly energy, or this, that, and the other. And I'm sure Moses and the Israelites were not thinking of it like this as much as just thinking this is a beautiful gold-covered box that we're making to honor the law of God. And in it also would go the budding staff of Aaron, and also later they will put a jar of the manna as memorial at the end of their 40 years in the wilderness. So now we continue number 247 that says, the command and plan to construct the table for the bread of the presence, also known as the shewbread table. In Exodus 25:23 it says, make a table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits high, which is basically the same dimensions that we had for the ark box itself. So this table will be similar dimensions, 2 cubits long and a cubit wide and a cubit and a half high. Overlay it with pure gold and make a gold molding around it. Also make around it a rim of handbreadth width. Put a gold molding on the rim. Make 4 gold rings for the table and fasten them to the 4 corners where the 4 legs are. The rings are to be close to the rim to hold the poles used in carrying the table. Make the poles of acacia wood, overlay them with gold, and carry the table with them. And make its plates and dishes of pure gold, as well as its pitchers and bowls for the pouring out of offerings. And put the bread of the presence on the table to be before me at all times. So inside of the one compartment, which later they will designate this, you have the Holy of Holies. In there will go the Ark of the Covenant. Outside of that is this table for the shewbread, which is directly outside of the curtain that divides the holy place from the most holy place. That table will go there, and on it goes these 12 breads, the bread of the presence, 1 bread for each of the tribes of Israel, that God would see there constantly as his connection with the people, pouring out of his presence in meeting with the people, where his word is the center of all things. And in fact, when we hide, the Bible says, are we not now the temple of the living God? We hide his word in our heart. His word, what we're reading right now, is what goes inside of us, just like the 10 commandments on the stone tablets were put inside the center of the box, in the center of the Holy of Holies. And that surface where he spoke was the center of the center, exactly the middle of a cube-shaped room called the Holy of Holies. And out of that, pouring out of that presence, is his presence with the bread, representing the connection to the tribes and to the people. So he's given instructions on how to make this table and set it up that way. We see number 248, a command and plan to construct the lampstand and 7 lamps. He says in Exodus 25:31, make a lampstand of pure gold, hammer out its base and shaft, and make its flower-like cups, buds, and blossoms of one piece with them. 6 branches are to extend from the sides of the lampstand, 3 on one side and 3 on the other. 3 cups shaped like almond flowers with buds and blossoms are to be on one branch, 3 on the next branch, and the same for all 6 branches extending from the lampstand. In other words, the lampstand is the center pole. Then you have 1, 2, 3 on one side, 1, 2, 3 on the other. This is also the formation of what is known as the menorah, or the 7 candles that are on this candlestick. No, the menorah actually is a fuller one for the field, but this is 7 lamps. And on the lampstand there are to be 4 cups shaped like almond flowers with buds and blossoms. 1 bud shall be under the first pair of branches extending from the lampstand, a 2nd bud under the 2nd pair, and a 3rd bud under the 3rd pair. 6 branches in all. The buds and branches shall all be of one piece with the lampstand, hammered out of pure gold. Where the other objects were made of wood and covered with gold, this is to be pure gold. Then make it 7 lamps and put them on it so that they light the space in front of it. And its wick trimmers and trays are to be of pure gold. A talent of pure gold is to be used for the lampstand and all these accessories, and see that you make them according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. So again, this is where we see Moses is seen as visualization, or God has showed him the imagery of precisely how to make this candle arrangement, or this lamp stand, which is the pole and the 3 branches to either side, making the 7 lamps that are set there with their shining parts. In other words, lamps had a direction that you could turn them to cast their light. These were all to be angled toward the space in front in the holy place where this table that we just read about would be laid with the showbread on it. And those things are in front of the curtain itself, which we'll read about later. And so most of you've seen the image of this. It looks like the center with 1, 2, and 3 on each side, making a space on the top for 7 lamps to be lit. And in the book of Revelation, we hear about the 7 spirits of God. And these represent, the 7 lamps could represent the 7 spirits of God that are, I know it's hard for us to understand that and comprehend it because we think one God, one Spirit, but He is, of course, not limited to one single place. He is in all places at all times, breaking out of our 3 dimensions into the 4th dimension, and He can be He can be with you, He can be with me, He can be everywhere. But 7 is a number of perfection in the Bible, and this is the instructions that God gave them specifically for this. So now we go to number 249, where we see command and plan to construct the tabernacle itself. Now this is the tent that will go over, or that will form these rooms. So it says in Exodus 26, we start in verse 1, make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of finely twisted linen and blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, with cherubim woven into them by a skilled worker. All the curtains are to be the same size, 28 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. Join 5 of the curtains together and do the same with the other 5. Make loops of blue material along the edge of the end curtain in one set, and do the same with the end curtain in the other set. Make 50 loops on one curtain and 50 loops on the end curtain of the other set, with the loops opposite each other. Then make 50 gold clasps and use them to fasten the curtain together so that the tabernacle is a unit. In other words, these pieces will go together where these loops are, and the fasteners will go through the loops, that you put them all together, like almost like curtain rings, like you would see a ring on a shower curtain, and the loop on the end of the curtain, that hole through it. He had this on both sides of the fabric of the 2 sections so they could be joined together and looped on these 50 loops in each. And this long piece, basically this about a 4-yard wide space, 28 yards or 28 meters approximately long and 4 cubits wide. It's like a very, very long piece of curtain, and these points or these holes are like you would see on a shower curtain, holes that are set to where these gold clasps could hold on to them for them to be attached to the framework that you're going to see in a moment mentioned. So we see details concerning the 11 curtains that are joined into 2 sections. It says, make curtains of goat hair for the tent over the tabernacle. Each, or it says 11 altogether. So each 11 curtains, or I'm sorry, I keep putting the word each there. All 11 curtains are to be the same size, 30 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. Join 5 of the curtains together into one set and the other 6 into the other set, because now versus the first dimensions, which were 5 and 5, and now we have 5 and 6. The reason for that is one of them will be the back. In other words, you'll have the sides of the holy place and the Holy of Holies, which is the tabernacle, that will be placed in the court. And I'll come up with a diagram for you so we can see it broken down later after we go through all the descriptions. But these pieces of material would be lined up on the sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the sixth one would be at the back to close it off in the rectangular shape. And that's why there are this number of the 11 of them together. Fold the sixth curtain double at the front of the tent. Make 50 loops along the edge of the end curtain in one set, and also along the edge of the end curtain in the other set. And then make 50 bronze clasps and put them in the loops to fasten the tent together as a unit. As for the additional length of the tent curtains, the half curtain that is left over is to hang down at the rear of the tabernacle. The tent curtains will be a cubit longer on both sides, and what is left will hang over the sides of the tabernacle so as to cover it. Now, these are very specific instructions on how to make this tabernacle. And I love reading about this because I always think back on when I was in Acapulco and we had to make a temporary church, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But first we see here the roof of the tabernacle made of ram and manatee skins. It says here in verse 14 of chapter 26, make for the tent a covering. See, because at this point you've just made the walls, the fabric walls of the tent, and the back being doubled. So you have a long rectangle, you have the walls to it, but now you make a roof, and it gives you the materials, skins, ram skins dyed red, and over that a covering of the other durable leather. And this actually is later revealed as manatee skins. You wonder, why would you use a manatee skin to be the roof? Because if you think about a manatee as an aquatic mammal that has very thick skin, obviously impermeable by water, waterproof skin. So once tanned and prepared, this become a permanent. If it rains, it does not matter. The tabernacle will stay dry inside because it has this manatee skin cover on it, which is fascinating to me. The framework configuration of the tabernacle. Now, this is, of course, you have these soft materials like the curtains that will make the walls, and then you also have the roof. And then we're going to go back inside of this structure in a moment and talk about the curtains that divide the separate rooms inside this. But now you need something to hold these soft materials up. You need a wooden structure, a framework. If any of you ever made a tent, maybe when you were younger, you remember you had those rigid poles that you had to set up, and then you spread the fabric on top of it. It's exactly the same. It says, make upright frames of acacia wood for the tabernacle. Each frame is to be 10 cubits long and a cubit and a half wide, with 2 projections set parallel to each other. And make all the frames of the tabernacle in this way. Make 20 frames for the south side of the tabernacle, and make 40 silver bases to go under them. 2 bases for each frame, 1 under each projection. Projection would be the base of the wooden poles. And for the other side, the north side of the tabernacle, make 20 frames and 40 silver bases, 2 under each frame. Make 6 frames for the far end, and that is the west end of the tabernacle, and make 2 frames for the corners at the far end. At these 2 corners, they must be double from the bottom all the way to the top and fitted into a single ring. Both small or both shall be like that. So there will be 8 frames and 16 silver bases, 2 under each frame. Also make crossbars of acacia wood, 5 for the frames on one side of the tabernacle, 5 for those on the other side, and 5 for the frames on the west at the far end of the tabernacle. The center crossbar is to extend from end to end at the middle of the frames. Overlay the frames with gold and make gold rings to hold the crossbars also overlay the crossbars with gold. So now we have this physical structure upon which later we will put the fabrics that we have already sewn together, and then there will also be dividing curtains on the inside. But before I get to that, I did want to mention that when we were living in Mexico years ago, we had this structure that the Lord showed me. We had been meeting inside of our home for about 3 years, and the house began to be too small. We would put all the people inside the house, but we didn't have enough people to have regular services, and so I knew it was time for us to expand and go out into a public place would become more visible. And we, at that time where we were, there were no places that you could rent. In other words, no halls, no gathering spaces, no restaurants that you could rent. This structure, all there was were housing units, and they're all very small. And so the only place we had was basically our car park or our parking lot near our building. And so I was praying and thinking about this and wondering how could we just have meetings out there. And we went to the main part of town, which was over the mountain. And then we were coming back once, as we were coming over the top of the mountain and going back toward where we lived in El Coloso was the name of it. I had suddenly a flash, like a vision. Remember that Moses was told, like I showed you on the mountain. The irony of this is God showed me on the mountain. I was on the top of this mountain driving over when I began to come down, and at the top of that mountain, the Lord showed me in a flash this structure that I was to build to make a temporary portable church or a tabernacle for us to meet in as we moved out of the house. And it was so vivid in the vision that I saw the structures that were made, the poles. I saw the top, the tent fabric or the tarps that would go over the top. I saw how to attach all this and how to make it stand, and basically I envisioned this V-shaped roof that extended long ways with a base, a floor base of this tent area to be a long rectangle like you would in a church room, lengthwise this way, and I envisioned chairs lined up inside this tent. And there was nothing, in other words, it would be like a temporary house-shaped structure. And so, prayerfully, as I saw this vision, I went home immediately and I made a model of it with some sticks and things I had in the house and some strings, and I did exactly what I saw. I built a little model of it, and I laid some paper on, like tissue or something on top to try to make a facsimile of what I saw on top of the mountain. And so then I made a plan. I wrote down exactly what wood I would need and how to fashion this place, which was really interesting. So basically I bought lengths of wood 2 inches by 2 inches square, very long, and I had to cut 1, 2, 3, 4 of them in 3 groups. So 3 times 4, 12, and these dimensions were very specific. 12 lengths exactly of these 2 by 2 wooden poles, if you would. And then at each, where they would all be the same, if you put them all together, it looked like a stack of sticks that were all the same length. Each of them was about more than 6 feet, so it was about 7 feet tall, right about 2 meters tall, each one. And so then there would be 1, 2, 3, 4 all together. One would open this way, so you would have a pole going up, a pole extended to a peak, and then a pole going down, and a pole all the way down to the ground. So you would end up with something that looked like this, trying to show you. So went up this way, that way, down. And when you were not using these structures, because one structure would be like this, then there would be another structure, the same design, and a third one. And when you're not using them, they folded up inside of themselves and then like this. And I even made these special hinges that would allow these poles to fit inside of the hinge so that it could become a unit that you could carry. Very portable, very usable. From when I last heard, it's still in existence somewhere. An artifact, if you would. But I made it. I built it. I put it together. I laid out all the materials all by myself, and I joined the joints together, and as I made the structure. And I remember that's that same time that one guy that was against our ministry came and threatened my life as I was doing it, and said that if I raised up that tent, he would raise his hand against it, he would tear it down, and he forbade any kind of temple there, any kind of worship of gods. And he claimed Huitzilopochtli, which was the name of the Aztec god in that region. And he basically it was a spirit speaking through him. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon me to tell him, if you raise your hand against God's work, God will raise his hand against you. He got furious and he walked off. But anyway, I raised that tent. I made that tent. Those three structures were connected in the vision. I saw lengths of rope with loops that were pre-cut, looped, carefully woven cords that would fit on these frames. So there would be all these ropes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lengths that were exactly the same, that would connect the three arches, so that when I would lay one down on top of another, and then a third one, when I would pull one up, the length of rope would pull the next one up with it like that, and then the third one up. And I would be able to, that way I could do all of this by myself. I could erect this whole church tent facility for the services. And I needed to find, the covering I saw in the vision was a tarp, kind of like the ram's skin or the manatee hide, and it had to be waterproof. And most of the tarps that we had available at that time were just not really good materials. But I knew truckers, and these truckers had these big commercial rubberized tarps they would put over their truckloads when they would drive from city to city. And I did a deal with someone to buy 2 of these big rubberized tarps that would be perfect. One on one end of the tabernacle and the other an overlap, so we'd had this waterproof top to it. And I did it. I actually, we didn't have the money. We liquidated all the money we had, and all we had of value left was our video cassette recorder at the time. And the man managed to take it in trade. So we traded our VCR and all the money we had to get these tarps. And I was able to construct and make this tent. It was there under that tent that the Holy Spirit came in 1995 in great power and filled the people with His glory for the first time. The first miracles we saw were under that tent. And the tent lasted for about 1.5 years. We stayed there until someone built a facility right across the street from where we were, and we began to rent that. And from there, from place to place, as the history of the church went on. But I really identify with the tabernacle. I see the power of it. And God seemed to like the tents better than even the grandeur of the great Solomon temple that he built. With God remembers David's little makeshift tent where he kept the Ark of the Covenant dry later. He claimed it as his favorite in the scriptures, prophetically, that God would remember the tent of David. And that's the restoration of the worship that we have today, without going into great detail about all that. But this tabernacle is incredible. We're going to go on and keep talking about this. Right now we have seen just the outside structure, the roof of the tabernacle. And in our next session, we're going to talk about the curtain for the Holy of Holies that goes inside of that rectangular box now we've created. Because where the Ark of the Covenant sits, we need to put a special curtain there. And that curtain for the Holy of Holies is what's called the veil of the Holy of Holies. That's the one that is ripped in half when Jesus dies on the cross. That's the one that is very significant as the line of demarcation between eternity and time, and the one through which we enter to make our way into the presence of God. And we'll go into that. a lot in our next session. But for now, that's it. We've run out of time, but I'm excited to continue with this journey with Moses. May God richly bless you, and I hope that you continue to join me on this journey.